what life situation forced you to ask God what your purpose is?
Back in 20, I think it was like 2010, 2011, I've been working for corporate America for this year would make my 27th year. And when I was in this particular position, you know, the upper management was really, really strict. And I was like, God, it has to be more to life than just this, this coming to work and being told what to do. And as I was sitting at my desk, Ella, I was just asking God, I was like, what is my purpose? It has to be a purpose other than just where I am today. And the Lord really said to me, He said, it is to help. But I'm like, that's such a broad answer. You know what I mean? Like, where is that going to lead me? And then fast forward to the pandemic. And we all went into, isolation, couldn't come out the house. And I'm like, God, what is my purpose? I heard you say to help, but I thought that I was already helping. But the Lord said, become a life coach. And I said, me become a life coach? I really didn't know how that was going to, transcend into, moving forward and into my future. And as the more and more I started to research this thing, the more and more I became connected with it, the more and more I discovered that this is what my true purpose in life is, and that's to help, youth and young and women to overcome, life obstacles, because we really get caught up in everything that's going bad versus everything that's going good. And life is painful, but I think frankly Beverly said it best. There's joy and pain in this life. So that's what really, really made me derive to my purpose, knowing that I needed to help.
I so agree that people oftentimes, because that's more painful, right? We focus so much on the
Yeah.
negative, and what is even harder is creating the positive. Now,
Yes.
I think this is where women come a bit later in life to that realization that they can actually create the positive. And I think this
Mhm.
realization oftentimes comes with the experience of becoming a mom, because then you literally experience what it means to create something good,
Mhm.
right? That is. And I can
Mhm.
imagine from what you've just described, feeling so caught up in a situation and in a job that seemed to have not fulfilled you fully. You must have made a couple of decisions in your life that led up to that point. But what was the most difficult decision you had to make in your life?
Basically enduring for my children. Because sometimes what you want to do is what you really cannot do when you have others dependent upon you. And when you have other lives dependent upon you, you have a tendency to make decisions, hard decisions in your life that may not really, really serve you. So, and the hardest thing I had to do was be patient, you know, be patient, because a lot of us don't know how to really be patient. And that was a really tough decision for me to make, because during those times, under that strict leadership, I wanted to quit. I really genuinely I wanted to quit. And one of the hardest decisions that I had to make was to endure, because it was not just me that was dependent upon me. There were other lives that I were responsible for that needed me and needed me to provide for them in that way. So that was a very, those were some hard decisions that I had to make back then. And that was learning how to endure and to be patient. It's not easy, but it's a behavior that we are missing in today's world.
Yeah, especially when it gets a little bit difficult, when it is becoming so painful that you think it's easier to quit than to keep going, and you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe there is no light, and that there has not been any light in the past years,
Yes,
maybe, and it's so difficult to
yes.
discern whether to continue or whether to quit and start something different. I think this is the most difficult thing in general, being a human, to discern and find that spark or where to get the answers, right? How to decide
Yes.
or make that type of decision. And when you are very young, right, or when you have kids, for example, depending on you, it's even harder to make the right decision. And I think, especially for young people, they get stuck, very much stuck in this procrastination phase, and they don't know what to do altogether, so they better do nothing. And
Mhm.
based on your experience, what would you say are the three main challenges in general that young adults face in today's world?
The three main challenges that they face is patience. They don't have patience. You know, the saying is good things come to those who wait. And they have to learn the style of waiting. They have to learn the style of patience. They have to understand that nothing happens simultaneously. It's not going to happen instantaneously for them. And another thing that they lack is self worth. You know, self worth is a real big thing for them because they think that they're supposed to have it again instantaneously. They think that what they see is the reality of what it really is. So then they, integrate this behavior into their life and they think that this is what it's supposed to be like, so and then they want to mimic the things that they see and not really understanding the work and the labor behind what they see, or the false pretense that may come with it, the filters that may come with it. Another thing that they lack is the ability to control themselves. They lack in self control, and they're lacking that because a lot of times they haven't been trained up. It's very, very important that the children are trained up in a way that they should go, right? And what does trained up look like? Trained up looks like nurturing their gifts and their talents, that those gifts and talents may behoove them, advance them, support them, strengthen them as they grow into their adulthood. So they're lacking the self worth, they're lacking self discipline, and they're lacking the patience. It's hard, but it's true. In the time of my development, when I was being a new mom at the age of 20, I had to really make a decision to continuously to go to school and be a new mom and work two jobs. You know, I was disciplined enough to know that there was someone else that was dependent upon me. And also, Ella, I knew that at the end of that road, that not only did somebody else need me, I needed myself. That's something that, we really have to have a conversation about. We're always discussing about how people need us, but we have to also tap into ourselves to know that we need us as well, right? So, in the same breath of that, the children, genuinely, the youth and young adults have to be trained up in this way. They have to go back to the basics of life, being trained up, being nurtured, being loved. They're also lacking love as well, because love is a huge factor in raising and training up children.
Yeah, and it starts very, very early, I feel, for parents. And I do understand this struggle. Of course, I got two children myself. And when they are born, right, they are so helpless, they are so cute, so sweet, and so they would not do anything bad. Everything is just cute, whatever they do.
Yeah.
And then what I observed is when a mother finds it hard to make the transition between being a nurturer 100% and make a
Hmm.
transition into a, I don't want to say coach or trainer, but in the end it is, she has to make that transition at the latest when the kid
Hmm.
is 3 years old and starts rebelling, and starts running
Yes.
around doing all kinds of things that might be dangerous to them or to others. So then there is a transition. So when mothers or even fathers, when they are present and don't make that type of transition, and for men it's easier because they are not so detached, attached to their children. When she doesn't
Yes.
make that transition, it will turn out that the kid will lack empathy, boundaries, self-control, self-worth, just like everything that you, patience that you have um, talked about just now. And they will lack all these things, and when they grow up they will act in a certain way when they are adults, and they will make many more wrong decisions for them, right? Not based on any societal template or anything, but
Hmm.
specifically for them. They will experience how it feels to make a wrong decision, and they will experience it so many times that they will get
Hmm.
frustrated with themselves. And I think they will lose hope in themselves when that happens. And that goes back to the responsibility of the parents. How has the mom or the dad trained? As I love that you put it that way, to train it. It's really not, I'm the mother and I do everything for you from A to Z,
Yeah.
and I want to be a good
Yeah.
mom, and I serve from morning till evening and through the night. No, at some point it has to stop, right? And you have to
Yes.
start creating a different perspective, right?
Yes.
Into what kind of human being do you want to train here? Do you want to have in your
Yes.
house, right? It's not like being in the personal slave of them, right? It's like,
Yes.
what kind of team do you want to build? This is
Yes.
what the conclusion that I've came to, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Yes, you hit it. You hit it, right on the nail. Because, I get people that come up to me or they'll call me and they'll tell me, how well mannered my children are, you know, and they're like, oh, your children are just so well mannered. You've really raised them right. And all that praise go to God. But I know I trained them up with mannerism, I raised them in love. I've also raised them with discipline, you know, that they understand that nothing is given to them, that they're not entitled to anything but the life that they've been given, and that too is not even guaranteed. But when it's all said and done, they understand the checks and balances of life and understand that they have to work hard in order to obtain a level of lifestyle that they seek. So I raised them, first of all, genuinely in true, genuine love. I raised them, the old fashioned way. People might be like, what's that? I was a young mom, but I was raised old fashioned. So I raised them underneath of that same, rule of thumb. And they turned out perfectly fine, They not rebellious, praise God. But I just think that training children up, and my tagline, Ella, is train them up. So when they grow up, they don't give up,
Mm.
because they genuinely have to understand that life has pains, it has its pains. And it's very pertinent that they be able to, balance those lives and pains and still be able to live a productive and healthy life.
Yeah, and you mentioned discipline. I'm quite curious what that would look like, because many people have different definitions of what discipline really is. And culturally speaking, we also have many differences between what discipline actually means. For one parent, it might be like, oh, I don't give him sweets every day, right? The little
Yeah.
boy or girl, right? I don't allow that. This is my way of disciplining the child. Or, and for the other, it will be much harder, right? It will be, well, you will be, what's the word I'm looking for? Um, Punishment. Yeah, that's the word. They will get some type of punishment because of doing XYZ, which parent thought was wrong, right? So, what kind of discipline is in your definition?
My discipline is what the Bible says: spare not the rod and spoil not the child, right? So it came with hurt, it came with healing, and it came with love, right? Because as a mother, I genuinely know that we could hurt our kids as well as heal them at the same time. You know, we can correct them as well as love them, and they won't look at us any different. You know, so I understood that concept, and the discipline that I pretty much implemented in my household was, guess what? A spanking. You got a good old fashioned spanking, you know. And one may think that that was harsh, but I would like to, pat myself in the back because guess what? Because of that training, because of those spankings, because of that love, all at the same time, all of that tough love, it worked out for, guess what? For me, for them, and for the society, they're not menace to society. They haven't been, in any type of trouble, legal trouble for that matter, because guess what? I disciplined them. I gave them tough love. And also on the flip end of that, I loved them and rewarded them when they did well. I supported them, in their activities. I was there. So they understood that mommy can hurt me and heal me at the same time. And guess what? All is going to be okay. So they knew that. And that's what I genuinely appreciate about motherhood, is that we have the ability as mothers and parents to hurt and heal them at the same time.
Now, my observation is that, and I may not know everything, and I don't live in the US, by the way. But my observation about the Black community in general is that spanking, for example, is still something that parents like to do, and it is seen as something normal, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
many people do it, and it is used as something that has been banished, for example, in Europe, right? Still, of course, many people and many parents still do it, but it is
Mm-hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
allowed. It is seen as something bad, right? So parents have become very soft with their kids, that
Mm-hmm.
they think, oh no, spanking is so bad. I would never do that to my child. But then what happens because of that, because they regret what their parents have done to them, maybe they have become so soft that their kids oftentimes lack the discipline, just like you mentioned now. While, and this is also a very interesting thing that I probably don't fully understand, but and you said it so beautifully, you do both. I don't personally
Yes.
agree with the spanking because I grew up in that soft era, so to speak, and I got spanked, by the way, right? So I feel like it was not good on me. It did not do anything good to me. Um,
Yeah.
but I feel there needs to be a way to find the balance between not being too soft and not being too hard. And maybe the reason why your kids turned out so well, based on the things that people say about your kids, is probably the other side. Maybe less the spanking, but more the encouragement. This is at least from what I have observed, because in the Black community, when parents and mothers, single mothers particularly, spank their kids a lot and very hardly, and there is no love on the other side. There is no balance, so to speak. They only spank. They only, like, there's only this negative side. They turn out to be kids who are lost, completely lost. They don't know what to do with themselves, with their lives. They think they are worth nothing. And so the criminal behavior, especially, is really, really high. And that is not only in the Black community, by the way. Anywhere in the world where you have that type of raising your kids in that way, you will have a real danger of sending your kids out into the negative, because that's all they see. But when you balance that with the positive and you see really how can you lift them up, how can you build them up, how can you instill in them real positive values, That's what makes them believe. Yes, they see, oh my God, she's mad at me again. What did
Mhm.
I do wrong? And I get
Mhm.
spanking again. Like, this is the negative part, the type of trauma that they have to work out themselves later in life. But when at the same time they see also the other side, they will have an easier time seeing the other side in themselves, that they can also be good. So they will know, okay, this is the better thing, this is when she's happy, this is when it's good, you know. And so they will have direction. I think this is something very positive, that very beautiful, that we can do as parents. And we all make mistakes, by the way. We
Yes,
all make
absolutely.
mistakes. With our firstborn, we make the most
Mhm.
mistakes, right? And we
Yeah.
do so much wrong, and we instill so much trauma in our children. Like, no matter
Mhm.
how soft and how good we think we are, we all do that. But if we find somehow a way to do that type of balance seesaw play,
Mhm.
right, we know we do some damage here that's inevitable, because we're humans, right, and we're not perfect. But if we
Mhm.
find a way to instill this positive, get out of our own trauma, and build
Mhm.
this human being up, then we've done a great
Mhm.
job, in my personal opinion.
Yes. Yes. I mean, beautifully said, beautifully said. And I completely agree with what you said. And, again, I gave them hurt and healed them. So I disciplined them and I loved them, you know, all at the same time. And one thing I appreciated that I did not do, I did not use profanity to my kids. You know, when I went to discipline them, it was never with profanity. It was with what I needed them to hear, what I needed them to know, and what I needed them to understand. And also, when I did that, I let them know at the end of that, mommy loves you, and I want nothing but the best for you. And you'll thank me in the long run. So, you know, is giving that balance to them that they can understand. And believe it or not, kids comprehend much better than we think that they do. You know, we have a tendency to think, oh, because they're a certain age that they don't understand. Yeah, you can break it down to them where they can comprehend and understand what it is that's being done and said. So it's about, again, giving balance, it's about giving love, and it's also about, disciplining them and also supporting them. That's the core of training them up.
Yeah. And would you say there is a difference between young men, particularly in your work, and young women, in what types of struggles or challenges they are going through?
Yes, there is a huge difference in, you know, because young men has been raised to not cry, to not show emotion, to be strong, to not be vulnerable, to really not express, their feelings. They've been taught how to bottle those things up. And as a young lady, as a woman that was once a young lady, I was told to, tell if something happens to you, let me know. You're trained differently, you're raised differently. So there is a huge difference in experiences, and I did completely the opposite. I told my sons, tell me what's wrong. you know, tell me if somebody is hurting you. Tell me if there's something bothering you. You have a safe space for hard conversations. You have a safe space to tell me what you're feeling, what you're going through. You don't have to be macho with me, because I'm a very feminine female. So I don't know how to be macho. So I needed the femininity to be able to reach their their masculinity at some level, right? So I wanted them to be vulnerable. I wanted them to show emotions. I wanted them to be open and vocal about if anybody done anything to them. I didn't want them to feel as if because of their gender that they had to hold up a specific type of face or a specific type of behavior. So I did not want that. So I definitely think that there is a difference. because even in today's society, not a lot of men come forward if they've been molested or if they've been inappropriately touched or raped. But when women come out, we're on the bandwagon. We create the Me Too movement, right?
Mm,
But when a man say that he's been inappropriately touched, then it's like, where you're 6 feet tall, you're 215 pounds. How could, women do this to you? But we do not want to dismiss his experience. We do not want to, make him feel as if like him coming forward was the worst idea or worst thing to do. So we do have a difference in experience between female and women. And we need to start creating a platform where men get to be vulnerable, when men get to show their emotion. Because we as women, we need to know that, because we think that they're a hard shell. So we really need to know that. Yeah. And I also think that that has filtered down into our younger generation. It's also, whereas the young men, they're grown up in that same type of teaching that they can't be vulnerable and that they have to be hard, and whatever atmosphere or environment that they're being raised in has caused them to feel as if like they become a man at the age of 15 and they have to provide for a family, and that's a lot of pressure on a 15-year-old or a youth or a young adult. And granted, I'm not aware of all of the backgrounds that they may come from, but one thing I am well aware of is um that how they should and should not be operating at certain ages. You got some youth and young adults that are adults. They look at themselves as adults because they have adult responsibilities. They have to watch their siblings, or they have to, pay a bill in the house at the age of 15, instead of enjoying their youth, right? And getting ready to transition into adulthood and really, creating a um a lane on what does that look like, or creating a path on what does that look like. Okay, I'm 15. I got to eventually get ready to transition into adulthood. What is that getting ready to look like? But making it an easy and fun and an enjoyable transition, right? So, we want to create a space where the young men have a platform that they get to be vulnerable and they get to be heard and they get to be seen, right? Yeah, so I agree.
and when you speak about 15, that's quite young. In Europe, for example, where I spent most of my adult life, um, kids, I call them kids or teens, usually start working at
Mm-hmm.
around 16, not
Yeah.
very much younger. So my feeling tells me you are either speaking about black young men, or this is a general thing in the US that young boys start working at around 15 or even earlier.
Yeah, here in the US, you can work in certain areas as early as 14, right?
Mhm.
With a permit from your parent to say, hey, you can work. But working at that particular age should be more fun and enjoyable versus burdensome of, hey, I got to work because I got to help my mom do this. And granted, if that's needed, if that's necessary, then hey, by all means, right? But it should be more of an enjoyable experience. It should be more of a training them up again, right? These are the things that as you begin to get old, you can begin to look forward to. This is what the real world really looks like. You have to get up early in the morning. You have to go to work. You have to be able to take care of yourself. You have to be able to provide more so than, hey, you have to go to work because I need your check at the age of 14 or 15 to help pay the light bill. You get what I'm saying? I was a teenage worker. I started working at the age of 15, and I was raised by my maternal grandmother. And she did not ask me for my money, you know? She allowed me to enjoy my labor She allowed me to enjoy the fruits of my labor and, integrate that experience to what has led to 27 years of work and, learning what that life looks and feels like.
I fully agree with what you said before about men and emotions and their inability of expressing them because it's expected of them from the society. And this is like across the globe, I would say, as far as I have experienced different cultures and countries. This is something that is across the world. It's not only in the
Mm-hmm.
US or in Europe. I've seen this in Asia. It's across the board. Like the expectation of a man to show up in a certain way is seems to be quite universal. Yet I think now that we are coming into the 21st century, I think we need to redefine those things just a little bit because we can clearly see based on how men are in this society today and how successful or not successful they are, that some things are not working out for them. And I see that clearly in the generation of my parents, for example, how given it is, for example, for my dad to not talk about his emotions. This is something he would never do. You will never find him talk about his emotions. I find that really bad. This is not something that should happen because it has health implications. It will have
Yes.
consequences on the health of a man. And I hope that the few men that are listening to my podcast, that they take this as a chance to be brave, because there's nothing more manly about a man who confidently knows what's going on emotionally in his body, who can confidently communicate those feelings appropriately to the person whoever is concerned about these feelings, and can act based on his feelings in a way that would not hurt anybody else. Now, this is a man, I think, and we need to redefine those things. It's not a person or a man who bottles everything up and he does his thing. He's a lone wolf and he creates a space where nobody can touch him. This is trauma. This is trauma based response, in my opinion, if a man bottles up that much. And again, it goes back to the mother, goes back to the parents. How
Yep.
did they
Yep.
allow this boy to express himself? If they say, oh, don't cry like a girl, like, how on
Mm-hmm.
earth is this boy going to like move forward even next
Yes.
time when he feels hurt, when something's bothering him? He will not feel brave enough to talk about it because obviously it looks like boys don't do that, right? So he learns very quickly to just shut up and do his own thing. And
Mm-hmm.
this is the worst that parents can actually do to their boys. And no wonder that they grow up and they are unable to process their own emotions, because that is also something that we need to teach them, how to actually deal with all this enormous stuff that is so overwhelming sometimes. And no wonder that men don't understand women. No
Mm-hmm.
wonder that they don't know what is going on an emotional level for a woman. And if they
Mm-hmm.
need to be functioning members of this society, they need to understand what a woman is. I mean, what a woman is really on the deepest
Correct.
levels. And a man who can
Yeah.
understand all these levels will be a successful man. And I'm not even talking about
Yes.
husband, will be a successful man in his life, whether he is
Yes.
married, whether he is in a relationship, whether he's a solo for all his life, he will be a successful man because he will be dealing with women all his life, no matter on what level. So I absolutely agree. We need to change the narrative, and mothers need to be the first one to encourage that in their boys and to be confident. Mothers need to be confident enough in
Mm-hmm.
themselves to allow their sons to cry when something's painful, when something goes wrong, when they're being bullied in school. They need to
Mm-hmm.
allow that. They need to be confident. They need to ramp up level their self-esteem, because it's oftentimes the mothers that they think, oh, what will the neighbor think if they see my son crying, like that he's not a man or that he's not strong enough. Like they always are concerned with other people think, but not what will
Mm-hmm.
happen to the man that he will grow up to. Like They need to be independent in their thinking, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I could not agree with you more, Ella. I'm telling you that that was my mentality. That was my concept when I raised my sons. And I have two sons and I have one daughter. And that's the way I raised my sons, to be vulnerable, to cry, and to know that, guess what? I can handle whatever it was that they were going through because I've been their age before, right? And that I was equipped enough to understand whatever was hurting them. I knew how to give them a solution to that. So I genuinely appreciated the space that I created for them. And even still to this day, they're 23. My son is 23, and I have a 19-year-old. And just, they'll call me on the phone and say this. We still have that connection. And then, my son, they'll cry. Yes, they know. It's okay. You're perfectly fine if you cry, right? Because we have to figure out what the solution to that cry is. But I want them to be able to get it out. You
Yeah.
know, I want them to know that crying, being vulnerable, is a therapeutic thing. It's a therapeutic thing. And guess what else? It's a human thing, right?
Mm.
It's not gender road. I always share with my clients that we're not humanly identical, but we are humanly equal, which means that I bleed red blood, you bleed red blood. And it's not based upon the gender of your blood, which definitely lets me know that we are all in this together. That, guess what? If something happens to a loved one in my family, I'm going to cry. My son is going to cry because we are humanly equal. We have those emotions that are attached to humanity. And we need not to separate that based upon the gender, because then we pigeonhole these men, as you stated before, that they cannot be human. And that's far from the truth.
Oh, you got me there.
Yeah.
That they cannot be human. That got me.
Yeah.
Because if it was not meant for men to cry, biologically speaking, the when we look at how biology works, it is always efficient and economical, right? So it will eradicate what is not used or what is not needed. So if crying for men was not needed and was not a basic need for the basic health level of every human being, men included, then they would not have the capability to cry. They would not have the tears to cry,
Yeah.
right? They would not have the biological function to cry. But since they do, obviously it serves a function. And so we need to let them, we need to find a way to make it happen, to let it happen, right? And it is not
Yes.
about whether you cry or not. Also for girls, I feel it's quite the opposite sometimes, in the emotional maturity that we raise our girls to be. And you have a girl, which is beautiful. We can talk on the same level, right? Sometimes I
Yeah.
observe parents allow girls much more, and she can cry for hours and she can throw a
Hmm.
tantrum, and this is okay, she's a girl, right? No, it's not okay. She needs to have the same composure, the same level of composure at some point. Like if she's 1 years old, okay, okay, we understand it, there is a process, still learning. But if she's
Yes.
like 12 years old and she's still
Mhm.
throwing a tantrum, in my
Mm-mm.
perspective and the way how I was raised, which was not perfect, by the way, but certain
Mhm.
things, certain discipline need to be there. Like, how can you
Yeah.
throw a tantrum at 12? Like,
Hmm.
hmm, we failed somewhere. That needs to
Yeah.
be fixed, right? And girls should
Absolutely.
also have an emotional maturity to make good decisions. Otherwise, and I see that all the time with grown up women. It's so frustrating. They start crying and think that they will get everything that they want because parents taught them, oh, when the girl cries, she gets everything. Oh, here's the sweet, here's something, here's a doll, here's whatever, right? Just stop crying. No. Like,
Mm-mm.
how can parents let that slip? Yes, it hurts when your daughter is crying. Yes, it hurts when she's hurt. But you need to think further than that. Like, she will do the same thing when she's 16. She will do the
Yeah.
same thing when she's 30,
Mm-hmm.
40, and 50. Like, think about that. Will you still
Mm-hmm.
love that? Will you still
Mm-hmm.
throw sweets at her so that she just calms down?
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, yeah. We got to have a balance when we raise, female and male, boys and girls, young men and young women. We have to raise them with the same level of love, right? And not gender role it,
Mm,
because we do them a disservice in doing that. The Bible says that they that sow in tears reap in joy. So if you want to reap in joy, then you have to sow in tears. So, and it does not exempt men, right? It does not exempt men, Ella. It's for everybody. It's for the human, being. It's for the human being, because overall, it's for your well being. Because crying gives a sense of release that, guess what? I got that out. Now, what can I do to resolve the issue, right? That caused me to cry. So I appreciate that scripture because it's not exempt. And we need to really understand that, these young men are equally hurting as
mm,
these young women, right? Because they feel as if that they cannot do certain things because of their gender role. And I think it's just not, it's not fair. It's not fair. So my heart is definitely centered and circled, um, for the young men, believe it or not. One would think that it's for the young women because I'm a woman, but it's really geared and centered and circled around young men. My heart, it bleeds for them. I have a passion for young men. And you were like, why you have a passion for young men? You're a woman. Because I understand it from a mother's perspective, and from a mother who has two sons, that they was not given the opportunity to be human, and they have been robbed of that, very thing. They've been robbed of that. And since they've been robbed, it's now time to rescue them.
in what way do you mean they have been robbed?
So, in a way that they don't get to feel vulnerable, they've been robbed of the way that they don't get to feel human in the aspect of being vulnerable. They've been robbed of, they have to be tough, they have to be strong, they have to be providers, they have to be protectors, you know? And I think that that has robbed them of a sense of being human, because they have to create this hard shell, you know, in order to live up to that standard.
Mm-hmm.
And again, there is a balance. So I think that because they've been robbed, now is the opportunity to rescue them. Let's rescue them, in creating that space to say, guess what? You can be vulnerable and still protect. You can be vulnerable and still be strong. You can be vulnerable and still provide. So having that balance, because it creates, again, a level of humanity, in a sense. So we have to rescue them.
I would even go so far and say you can only be strong and only serve and protect as a man if you are vulnerable. Because if you are not vulnerable, you don't even know what's going on inside of you. So, how can you relate to any other person if you've shut down all your emotions? You will not take anyone else seriously because you don't take yourself seriously in that sense.
Yeah.
So, to be a strong man means to know what's going on inside of you and not just shut it down and just freeze it
Hmm.
all up. Like,
Yeah.
this is the kind of new type of male leaders that we need in this world, And there is like a very strong division nowadays going on where men either are very feminized or behave very
Mm-hmm.
feminine, or they tend to be very, very hard and frozen, right? There is
Mm-hmm.
barely anything in between. And I find it very concerning because
Yeah.
also men tend to not want any relationships anymore. There's a tendency,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the US, going
Mm-hmm.
on, which is frightening. If
Yeah.
we look at it very distinctively, and also the very feminine men, with all the movements that we have concerning gender, this is also a very distinct development that I think will go in a direction where there's no turning back anymore. This is the final stage, so to speak. I don't know how to biblically find a mirror or expression for that, but I think
Yeah.
it's also in the Bible that there is a final stage, and I think we're in it. And if we mothers don't make that turn, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if we can turn it around, but at least for the children that we have put out into this world, for them we can make a turn. For those who are still open hearted and listen, like to this podcast, we can collect them. We can unite them in a way that we can create a future that has a future. Because without children, there will be no future. And the only alternative to that is robots, robot kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
we don't
Yeah.
want that, and we are already rolling straight ahead towards that type
Mm-hmm.
of future, which will affect all of us and your work particularly, right? Like we need to make some moves, some serious ones.
Yeah, and we need to make them immediately, right?
Hmm.
Because again, they're growing up. But one thing I am optimistic in knowing and believing is that we can make a change. We can make a turn. Because here is the thing, Ella, it was words that got them into the mindset that they're in today.
Mm.
And there's going to be words that's going to undo and reconstruct that mindset, right? So we have to get them to a place of transformation and not allow them to conform to this world, right? We have to transform them because the Bible speaks of be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. And how do you renew a mind? You renew a mind with words. You renew a mind with training. You renew a mind with positivity. You renew a mind with encouragement. And those are words. And when we begin to speak those words, we can transform them no matter what age they are. So I'm optimistic in knowing that we can make that turn no matter where they are. We just have to do it collectively because when we realize that we are all in this together and what affect one affects all, then guess what? We'll get on the same page in the same book and begin to make that transformation.
I love that you say it is because of the words that they have received,
Yeah.
and because of the words, we can also shift and turn and transform. I fully agree. Many people think, oh, words, just words. Like, yes, they might have a meaning, but there's nothing more to it, really. And someone who is studied linguistics for a very long time, it is has become very evident that words have much more than just meaning,
That's right.
like
That's
the
right.
energetic collection, right, that they carry has an
Mm-hmm.
effect, an enormous effect, especially when since we are talking about parents, what they sometimes tell their kids also has an effect on
Yeah.
how the brain develops itself, right? And sometimes parents think it's nothing bad, nothing will happen to the kid if I say XYZ, or if I use bad words, or if I put them down, or if I tell them constantly that they are not good enough and stuff like that. It has an effect. Energetically, it has an effect. We are all energy, right? And if you, there is certain energy that is more towards positive, and there's certain energy that goes more towards negative. So what kind of a human being you want to create, and that comes
That's
down
right.
to your words. And I so love that you mentioned that.
Yes. Yes, I agree. We have to be careful about the words we release because, and I'm a biblical person. I believe solely in it. I've been raised up in the church, and the Bible speaks of life and death is in the power of the tongue. So
Mm-hmm.
what you release out of your mouth, right, is your words. So, it teaches us to be conscious about our words because they have life and death in it. It has power in it. So, I never ever told my kids what they couldn't do. I always, well, not, kids, they were kids then, but they're children now. But I told them, I always share with them what they could do, and I gave them again, if you can't do this, then find something that you can do. But we can do all things through Christ that strengthens us. So, I just believe in that theory. And, we have to train them up in a way that they will go, that as they grow old, they don't depart from that training. They may stray, but they won't depart. And there is a difference.
I love what you just said because that can happen so many times during
Yeah.
our lifespan, which is quite long if you think about it. Things that you have learned from your parents, if it is not instilled strong enough with the right type of energy, it will find its
Yes.
release because you will not enjoy that type of energy. At some point, your body, every 7 years, we are a new human being. All our cells are new, all our connections are new, so to speak. So you are basically a new human being. And you will release that which does not serve you usually, right? Unless you are in deep trauma, then you will clamor to it and you will never release anything bad, but you will collect it more and more the more you celebrate that type of trauma. But generally, we need to find a way to give our kids something that will last a lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like how you put that because it also starts with, as you stated before, us as mothers, right? How we were raised or what traumas that we have experienced. But I'm gonna take a walk on the wild side here, Ella, and I know I may get chewed up when it's all said and done, but I'm okay with it because I'm equipped for the kind of backlash that may come with this or the positivity that may come with it. It's all about the mindset. And here is where I'm going with it. When we raise these children up, for some people, they look at it like, oh, I'm a single mother, so I have limited, resources, or I have limited experience, or I have limited this, or I have limited that. But I want to change the narrative and the trajectory of single motherhood. I
Mm-hmm.
want to say that we need to stop viewing it that way and start viewing it in a way of being a steward mother or being a strong mother. And the reason why I say steward mother is because you are governed over these children, right? As they grow up, you can no longer control them, right? So you're a steward over them for a period of time, right? Which transitions into being a strong mother because women have been raising kids since the beginning of time. And it won't change. Women have been raising kids single handedly for the beginning of time. You have some married women who have raised their children by themselves just with the presence of a husband or the presence of a male figure, right? But they still raise their children single-handedly. But it doesn't transcend into being a single mother. So I want to just dispel that myth that we are single mothers. We are steward mothers, and we can do this. We're built for this. Women are built to do and raise and nurture children. It doesn't mean, or it doesn't matter if if you do it alone. Yeah, there may not be some fairness in it, granted, right? But at the end of the day, we are equipped to do this. So I think that the single mother, um I mean, I want to say slogan because it is a slogan. We tap into that in order to get some sympathy or some empathy,
Mm.
right? And I understand it from from a woman's perspective, but I just want to change the trajectory of being a single mother and it being looked upon as like you get all of these free resources or you get this level of empathy. Guess what? It was a choice that you made, right? It's for some people, some people may have experience where they didn't have no choice, but at the end of the day, we are equipped to be nurturers with, the experiences that we have overcame.
I'm in your boat because I'm a single mom too. And
Yeah,
it might not always have been a free choice as we wish we could have had that type of
yeah,
choice, because there are oftentimes two people involved in this, and what might have been your choice might not have been the other party's choice, right? Or
mhm.
they may made a different decision which you cannot influence all the time, right? You are not a
That's correct.
dictator or anything, and it is not a bad quality of
No.
a woman if she chose a man who she did not know 100%. You never know a person 100%. And
Hmm.
it also comes down to how this person shows up, right? And there are so many different levels of why or how a woman can become a single
Yes.
mom. And it is my same mission to somehow change the narrative or trajectory for single moms, because it is loaded with unbelievable prejudice against women just
Yes.
in general, that she is the lowest of the low if she is a single mom. And
Yes.
I have
Yes.
experienced this fall single-handedly twice, but the first fall was the most painful, right? Becoming a single mom for the first time is always the hardest, because before that I experienced a high level of respect no matter who I met in my life. But as soon as I got a single mom or became a single mom, I was dropped to the lowest level
Yes.
as soon as I mentioned that I was a single mom. All the
Yes.
prejudice, all the heavy hate that was projected onto me, and bear in mind, I experienced that in Germany. It might be different in a different country, cannot say much about that. But in Germany, the experience was really heavy. And it might be
Mm-hmm.
due to the fact that maybe this country is generally more traditionally built. And of course, they have single moms, but I think in the US, the prevalence of being a single mom is much higher. So the acceptance might be slightly softer than in Germany, but it was brutal. It was enormously brutal. And I don't wish that type of experience on any woman. And I think, just like you said, we are equipped to do that job and we are
Yes.
good at it. We know
Yes.
what to do. And of course,
Yes.
it is harder if you don't have a partner who would support you in things, especially during the time when the baby is little. It is
Mm-hmm.
hell because you have to do everything yourself. And if you don't manage yourself correctly, you will turn out to be a horrible single mom. We have those women, and I have full empathy for these women that they
Yes.
struggle through this time. It's not like I judge you, oh, you're a bad single mom. No, it's full empathy because I know
Full
how
empathy.
much work it is. And
Mm-hmm.
we, by supporting each other as women, which is also something that has been fought against consistently in the Western world, that women compete against each other. It is not
Yeah.
possible for single moms to win and to make it if women constantly compete against each other. If there is zero support, then a single mom cannot make it. But if she is in a circle of supportive women, it will not matter whether she's a single mom or not. And I think it is a
That's right.
prejudice in general that you need a man to raise a child. Yes, he brings great quality to the family if he
Mm-hmm.
is present, which most men are
Yeah.
not. Just because you're
Yes. Yes.
carrying that ring on your finger doesn't make you a husband. It doesn't. And just because you have given birth to a child doesn't make you a mom. I want to state that as
That's right.
well. You earn that title, you earn it every
Mm-hmm.
day. And if you don't show up on every level, you don't get that title to wear. And with
Mm-hmm.
I say that with full empathy towards the moms and towards the men. And this is why this podcast is here to help people on those
Yeah.
levels to find a way to equip themselves, to gain more skills, to find more fulfillment, more purpose in their lives, and to become better human beings to themselves, but also towards others.
Yeah, I completely agree. I have the utmost empathy for the steward mothers, who do it single handedly. And I know it's a task, it's a job, but again, we're equipped to do this. We can do this. I don't know if you've seen that movie, it was called The Single Mothers Club.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think if my memory serves me correctly, and I know that it does, Tyler Perry is the author and the executive producer of that movie. So, um, yeah, they built a circle of women who were raising their children single handedly, and they supported each other and they were there for each other. So, I definitely think that that's what the community definitely needs. And we have to, remove the stigma from single mother, that they are the bottom of society. This is a task that is not easy. You have to show up for it every day, but we just have to change the wording because, again, words have power, right?
Yeah.
So if we change those words, I think that it would begin to elevate the mindset of those steward mothers who are raising their children single handedly.
Now, what would you say young adults and maybe particularly young women, if that's the majority of your clients, or maybe the young men, it would also be interesting. What do they misunderstand the most about success and life in general?
They misunderstand patience. They misunderstand that, and they misunderstand success in life in thinking that they have to have it right now. It has to happen right now, you know? And that is far from the truth. It takes 40 weeks for a baby to be developed, you know? Um, and if you do the math on that, that's ten months. It takes 36 weeks for you to actually be able to deliver a baby. So, in that same saying, it takes time to grow up, you know? It takes time to be successful. Back then, if you look at it, when you were growing up, you would think that, I can't wait to be 18. Oh, I can't wait till I turn 18. I don't want to be living with this woman, or I don't want to live in this house anymore, right? And you're so anxious to grow up. And then when you get to the age where you're somewhat grown in a sense, you start to reflect like, I wish I could go back to being a child again, because adulting is hard, right? You really start to come into the knowings and encountering real life adult issues. My grandmother used to tell me this. She said, "Don't rush to get old. You'll be adult more than you'll be adult longer than you ever would a child." So, and I never could understood and understand that concept then. But now when I look back, I'm like, I understand it better by and by. So I think the thing that they're missing is patience, and they need to learn how to wait for the success and wait to grow up, because things will happen for them when it's supposed to happen and when it needs to happen. And guess what? Sometimes we can get things at the wrong time. We could get the right things at the wrong time, and then it becomes disastrous, right?
Mhm.
So when you learn how to wait, it builds a behavior, it builds a sense of knowledge, it builds a sense of intellect. when you begin to put pieces of your life together and understand why you had to do this in order to do this, in order to be successful at this, right? But that all comes with timing. You know, sometimes even the clock is wrong twice a day, right? So in that vein, we have to learn how to be patient. You know, you in your patience and in their waiting, I think that what they're seeking, they will obtain it, but they just have to learn how to be patient and wait for that success and to grow up in life.
And I think what they also misunderstand with in connection with the word wait is I think they believe waiting means that they have to sit still. Okay, I will sit still, I will wait, right? Not doing anything, I will wait. Okay, I'm waiting, right? And this is
Yeah.
like the wrong mindset. Waiting just means you need to get going in that time while you're waiting, right?
Yeah.
The time will pass, but in that time you need to make moves. You need to test yourself. You need to grow. You need to develop yourself. At least that's my humble opinion. That makes waiting much more fun because you see the incremental growth steps that you can take and that you make, in fact, every day, right? If you have that kind of mindset that, okay, how do I want to grow today while I'm
Mm-hmm.
waiting, right, for that
Mm-hmm.
big breakthrough,
Mm-hmm.
whether it is my
Mm-hmm.
business or whether it is a personal goal that I have, right? For many women, for example, it's weight loss, right, that they are waiting for. But it is not in the sitting still and I will not eat for a whole day and I will starve myself to half death that then your weight will drop. No, like you need to move in certain ways,
Yeah.
also quite literally and quite physically, to get to
Yeah.
a certain level, right? And then the success, of course, will come. And patience is so hard. I remember this, fully agree with you. This is something that I struggled the most with because my brain works enormously fast. It has a very high speed working power, while the body or the world is has
Mm-hmm.
its own pace, right? And just because you have worked out an amazing idea here in your head doesn't mean that it will come to fruition, right? And
Mm-hmm.
especially if you are a creative mind and less of a doer, doing type of person like me, right? It will feel really hard to sit in this discomfort, right? Of not being able to make it happen right away. It was enormously hard. I was so angry at everything, at myself, at the world, that things were not moving as fast as in my head. And sitting in this discomfort and finding ways to be bad at something, because in your head you're a genius, right? You're good,
Mm-hmm.
whatever you have, whatever goal you have, you're already perfect, right? But when you start doing it, oh my god, I suck, right? This is like really not good. Like I need so much more practice. Do I have the
Yes. Yes.
energy? Will I have the
Yes.
energy
Yes.
to actually get
Yes.
there, right? To sit
Yes.
in this
Yes.
discomfort is like the most painful thing for
Mm-hmm.
people who have big ideas, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
is also hard for people who have no ideas, are not the
Yeah.
creative
Yeah.
type. They
Yeah.
don't know
Yeah.
anything about themselves. They don't know how to move physically in a direction that will make them feel fulfilled because the creative is already fulfilled in their mind. As soon as they can create some cocktail of ideas, we're already
Mm-hmm.
fulfilled. We don't need no
Mm-hmm.
success. We don't need no awards or
Mm-hmm.
accolades. We're already fulfilled. That's our purpose, right? We have our
Yeah.
ideas. But those who
Yeah.
are not creative, I think it's even harder for them because they need physical outer world lifelines that they can hold on to make the right life choices and decisions.
Yeah. And I know that that's something that they have not mastered. They have not mastered the art of waiting, and we have to teach them how and train them on how to do that, because there is a reward at the end of your waiting, right? And also, waiting patience It's a virtue, it's a behavior, it's a conduct, right? And you have to learn how to master that conduct. And knowing that if I continuously to work and build and create and be patient in doing this, that there is a reward from all of this, right? And understanding that that reward may come years down the line, but the commitment to being patient will pay off. So that's the, that's the piece that they're missing. And I think once they learn the art of waiting, they can master life and success, right? And they will begin to understand, and not just understand, but enjoy and comprehend and gain wisdom in waiting, So we have to train them up again, Ella, because we're back to the basics. We're back to the basics of life because they like, it's supposed to be like that. And then the entitlement of what they think they're supposed to have in that moment. So we have to teach them the art of waiting.
You just sparked an idea in my mind when you said the reward might come years down the line, like not right away, maybe not even next week, but you actually have to wait for many, many years. And I believe when you have the wrong goal, you will always strive for it to come now, to want it now.
Yeah,
But when you are in
yeah.
your purpose and when you do the right thing and when you have the right goal, when you want the right thing, I think you will have an easier time being patient because you know how good it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know
Mm-hmm.
how it makes you fulfilled and feel good about yourself that you are willing to wait that long. So whenever
Mm-hmm.
you, and I've experienced that of course myself when I was younger, right? We all want a million things when we are young. And when it is the
Yeah.
wrong thing, you want it immediately because it is the wrong thing. It is the first hint, I believe, that should tell you, oop, red flag, you want it right away, you want it so urgently, you cannot wait for it. It is the
Yes.
wrong thing. Let it go.
Yeah.
Right? And if it
Yeah.
is something that you are willing to wait for, even years, even decades, that might be maybe the better choice to make for life
Yeah.
because when you choose the wrong thing, and I see people doing that all the time, choosing the wrong goals, having the wrong visions, going for the wrong thing because of whatever, XYZ, a million reasons why people make the wrong choices for them, right? Um, I lost my train of thought. Now, when they
That's
make
okay.
the wrong choices in their lives, they will make a lot of mistakes. This choice, this single choice, will not be the only mistake that they will make. But because of choosing the wrong thing, like there's a tree, it grows fruit, which
Yeah.
bears fruit, like the fruit will be mistakes all over the place. Like
Yeah.
you will reap the fruit of mistakes on that tree that you have been growing, if we take it in natural terms. But if you choose the right thing, man, not only will this tree be big and beautiful and strong and withstand every storm that comes your way, but the fruit that will grow from that tree, it will not be mistakes, but you will taste the sweetest and best fruits ever. It will be love, it will be fulfillment, it will be wealth in on all levels, right? Not just monetary. You will be a servant in this world. You will not be that egotistical person that just wants to take and take and take, right? You will be a giver because you have a tree that can feed the whole world. I think
Mm-hmm.
this is what it comes down to. And this is where we need to be very careful, especially as young people, which of course I was not. I made my mistakes.
Yeah.
I
Of
planted the
course.
wrong tree. I
Mm-hmm.
ate the wrong fruit in biblical terms, right? But then I realized, gosh,
Yeah.
where did I get this? Where do I get this seed, the right seed to plant a
Yeah.
tree with which I can feed the world with things that will really nourish them?
Yeah. Yeah. And we all have made mistakes. We all have fallen short, right? We all have I mean, we've been repeated offenders with some things. You would think that, have you done one thing, you would be like, oh, I shouldn't do that again. But one thing I appreciate about life is that you get to do it over, not in a sense of
Mm.
being, of being born again from a natural standpoint, but you do get to do it over. You get to be like, oops, I made that mistake. That didn't work out too well. Let me do, let me do something else, I mean,
Oh.
and I think, and I'm grateful that we have that affordability to be able to do it over. When you mess your credit up, right? You get to get another opportunity to redeem yourself. And that's what we really need to focus on how, when we make these mistakes, how can I redeem myself versus beating ourselves up, right? Because
Mm.
one thing about, and as you've said, and I really agree with you on that, is when you're walking in your purpose, it will fulfill its purpose, right? And the Bible says this, that my purpose will prevail. So he said purpose, not your plan, but your purpose, right? So what is that purpose? What is that gift? What is that talent in you that the world needs to see, that it will prevail for years and years and years to come? That you don't mind waiting for it, because we have to master the art of waiting, but we also have to have the mindset of, guess what, we don't mind waiting, right? Because when you don't mind waiting, you'll continually to be committed to your purpose, no matter how long it takes for it to be fulfilled or for the world to see it. And sometimes the world may never see it, but guess what, it's a reward to yourself to know that I fulfilled my purpose. So I totally agree with you when you say that, we have to walk in our purpose. And normally I will put that behind my name. I will rename myself on the Zooms, and I have purpose behind it, because I genuinely feel and know at this particular time in my life and season in my life that I'm walking in my purpose. I'm fulfilling my purpose, and it feels good in doing it. From all of the things that I've been through, from where I came from. My mother, she had me at a very young age. You would think, like, what is a child who's like 12 years old doing pregnant, right?
Oh, she
But
was
she,
really
she
12?
yeah, so she had me at the age of 13, and here I am. So I know that I had to be here, and I've now discovered why I am here, because I had to fulfill this purpose.
Oh, that's beautiful. When you
Yeah.
think back uh, y- to yourself or about yourself when you were 17,
Yeah.
do you remember the time, how you felt, and what was going on in your life when you were 17? And if you imagine the challenges that you were facing, and it can be 18 or 17,
Mm-hmm.
around that age when we are just about to be adults, right? Just about to
Mm-hmm.
fly out into the world and be independent. If you
Mm-hmm.
could make a wish back then of who you could talk to or have a conversation with to then ask certain questions, it can be a celebrity, it can be a historical figure. Who would you want to talk to and what would you talk about?
I will want to talk to Maya Angelou.
Mm.
She was on my list of people to one day meet. And she transitioned before, I had the opportunity. But I may won't see her on this side, but I'll see her on the other side. And what I wanted to ask her is just, how did she overcome? You know, because being a freedom fighter was not easy. Being able to overcome in those days and times as an African American woman was a hard thing. It was a very challenging thing. And I wanted to know, because if I remember her story, that she was born in kind of like, a tumultuous kind of a, environment. And I want to ask her, how did she overcome as a freedom fighter? How did she overcome? What skills or what tools can she give me as an African American woman on how to become a woman? You know, because I didn't know how I was going to become a woman. I didn't know what that looked like. I had no idea on what would be the end result of that. I was very confused at the age of 17 and at the age of 18. I knew nothing. I knew
Yeah, we
nothing.
all. Yeah.
I knew nothing. I knew nothing, absolutely nothing at that particular age. I only knew what was going on that was trending at that time, right? But I look back and I'm just like, I was completely confused. I was completely confused. I was afraid of becoming a teenage mother because that was an epidemic at that particular time, you
Mm.
know? And I know that Maya Angelou was a teenage mom, and I wanted to really tap into her wisdom. How to possibly get around that if at all possible. But needless to say, that's what I would ask her. How does she overcome? How does she, navigate being an African American woman, and what skills and tools could she share with me at the age of 17 to 18 on how to become a woman and how to make that transition into womanhood? Because it was a difficult time for me at the age of 17, as I've shared with you. My maternal grandmother raised me. I was born to a teenage mom, and my father was out doing whatever he was doing at that particular time, and I was lost, and I didn't even know I was lost, you know but as I transition into my womanhood and I get to reflect on life, I was lost, you know even though I was being raised by my maternal grandmother, and I promise you I never missed a meal. She made sure I ate every day, and she was always there, and I had a wealth of aunties, and I had an uncle, and I had the family dynamic. I had it there. It wasn't the best, but it was there, and I had that, but I was lost. I was confused. I was bewildered. I was just going through life, and I was just going along just to get along at that particular time. I had no identity, and that's another crisis that the youth and young adults are missing out, are challenged at. They don't know who they are. They don't have any identity. And I've really had this epiphany in my mind of identity versus identification. There's a huge, huge difference with identity versus identification. So I didn't know who I was then. And guess what? It may have worked out for me, but I'm just glad that I've evolved into the woman that I am today. But I would have definitely loved to tap into Maya Angelou. Yeah, yeah, definitely.
I love what you just mentioned about identity and identification. How do you see it now? What is the difference for those who may struggle to see a difference?
Yeah. See, your identity is the characteristics of who you are. Your identity is what makes up who you are. Your identity is what people know you to be. You can walk into a room and they can say, "Oh, that's Ella. She's nice. She's kind. She's loving. She's gentle. She's this." That's your identity. Your identification is what you see on your identification card: how old you are, your birth date, how tall you are, what your weight is, where you live, your ethnicity. That's your identification. Your identity is who you are, you know, as a person, as a woman, as a human being. That's your identity. That's what people would know you by, right? They can really care less about your identification, about how much you weigh, you know, the color of your skin. They can care less about where you live and how, flamboyant of a life you're living. They're worried about your identity. How are you showing up in your life? How are you contributing to, the success of life, into the society of life? How are you showing up to make this world a better place to live in, right? That's what the focus needs to be. Not of your identification, but your identity, your characteristics, who you are as an individual, and your overall well being.
And I think also your identity will be something that will last generations, while your
Yes.
identification that will die as soon as you die. Like you leave that
Yes,
on
it
that
will.
plane, right? But
Yes, yes,
your
yes.
identity, how you are, like you've described it, your it can be your personality, your traits, your gifts, your purpose, your passion, right? That can live on for many many generations if you plant the right tree, right? That it does not rot, right, in 10 years, but it really is nurtured also not only by you, but you really find a tribe and community that believes in that tree, right? That tree actually brings something valuable to the entire community, so you will not be the only one taking care of it, but you will have a
Hmm.
community. And I think that is very much lacking in today's world, no matter where we look. It's not only in the US or in Europe. I think it's across the world, this development of me, and only me, and I'm good, I'm alone, and I can do it all by myself, right? Like you can cry that out as much as you want, but if you get to a certain stage in your life, you will realize you're nothing alone. If you're an island, you will die on that island. I have to say it brutally, right? Because if you don't build a family, if you don't have kids, or if you don't build a circle, if you don't want kids, I respect that. But if you don't have a circle of really good friends, and not just somebody check mark on your calendar or list, I have friends, but they are not really supporting you, like what are you doing in this life? I think community is crucially important, and also our children will benefit so much from any type of healthy community that we strive to build, which is why this me going alone everywhere and I did it all by myself, right? All this
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
being so proud about it, doing all by yourself is so celebrated nowadays, right? There's people show no pride in when they have achieved something together. And I think we need to bring that back, because in the end, we can only achieve tremendous things when we do them together, because the energy, like it's double energy, right? That you bring to
Yeah,
the
yeah,
table.
of
Like
course.
how much more can
Yeah.
you do with that? So
Hmm.
this is so much more valuable. I love how you put it, the difference between identity and identification, and I hope it got through.
Yes, it will, because the identity of who one is the legacy in which they leave, is the legacy in which they leave behind. As you stated, you can die and people will not even talk about your race, or they won't talk about, where you live, but they will talk about the impact that you made in the world, and how you were as an individual and your personality. So that is very, very important. And I had that written down in my journal, because that's going to be a course that I'm going to create for the youth and young adults: identity versus identification, because they really need to identify with who they are, their goals, and their purpose in life, so that they don't make the wrong decisions. Because one thing I am well aware of, Ella, and I heard a great person say this, and I think it was Dean. I don't know how to pronounce his name. He's one of the life coaches that are well known throughout this particular industry. And he said, life is between B, C, and D, right? And the B is for the birth, the D is for the death, and the C is in the middle for the choices that we make, right?
Mm.
So, what choices are we making that identifies with our identity? So, it's very, very keen that we make sound and wise choices in this life that we can honestly stand on and be proud of.
Yeah, and that we don't shy away to get help if we
Yeah,
know that we can do it all by ourselves.
yeah.
Now, my last question, and I can talk with you for hours, but the last question I would love to
Yes.
know is if there was one thing that you could remove from this world, what would it be and why?
Yeah, and I thought about this question and I'm just saying to myself, like, whoa, that's a loaded question. I just want to let
Mm-hmm.
you know that that is a
Mm-hmm.
loaded question.
Which is why I'm asking it.
And if there was one thing that I could remove from this world would be money.
Mm. Tell me
Would be
why.
money. And the reason why is for the love of it is the root of all evil. And it's the evil in which we see today for some of those who have the love of it. And everything is centered around in this country is centered around money. How much money do you make that puts you in a specific category, you know, and that really takes away from the humanity of just living a normal and a regular enjoyable life, right? We're categorized about if the rich is over here and the poor is over here and the middle class is over here. You get treated differently, you know, versus just being treated as a human being. How about that? How about that? Why does money have to define who I am as a human being and what I'm entitled to as a human being? You know, you see the poor who don't have money, who can't afford to eat, but why should not? Why they should not be um, able to eat a quality of meal because the lack of money that they have, you know? Why should we be entitled to eat a high quality of meal based upon the level of riches or money that we have? You get where I'm going?
Mm-hmm.
So, if I had to take anything out of this world, it would be money. And that would be the reason why. Because the love of money has rooted all evil. And it has definitely separated us from humanity in such a major way that the rich is over here, the middle class is over here, and the poor is over here. But when you look at it, we all are human. And I need to eat regardless of my status. You know, I need air to breathe regardless of my status. I need a roof over top of my head because we live in seasons where there's wintertime, it gets cold, it gets hot, and it's not based upon my status or what I have monetarily that defines me as a human being. And I thought about that. And I thought about that all the way through. Some people may pick hate and crime, but if you bundle it all together, it comes from the love of money. Comes from the love of money. So if you remove the money piece out of this world, we all look at each other just the same. We look at the royal family because why? They have money. They have money. But when we all get to heaven, it's not based upon your status. It's not based upon what you had on this side. It's not based upon how much wealth you had. It's who you are as a person. What did you do as a person? So if I had to remove anything, it would be money. And that would be the reason why.
That this would stir up so much in me when you said I would remove money, right? I honestly thought you would remove something else, but that really, in a way, stirred the deepest thoughts that I had ever since I moved from Asia to Germany.
Yeah.
Um, I had no affiliation, obviously, when we were living in Asia with any riches, even though my dad earned quite good. But then I don't know if you know the history of it. The Russian Empire, so to speak, broke down, and everybody was just earning the same or nothing at all. So my upbringing was basically in being poor. Because when we came to Germany, obviously not everybody will give you money. You will not get a flat or an apartment to live in, right? You would have to earn that through years of living in homes, sometimes with other families together in one. I don't know. You could call it room, right? That was
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
reality for the first years. So
Mhm.
all I knew was being poor, monetarily being poor, while growing up in Asia made me feel and believe that I was rich because of how we grew up in nature, being really connected with the real wealth of this world, if I may
That's
say
right.
so, still say
That's
so,
right.
right? And
That's
when
right.
I came to Germany the first time, I got connected with the mindset of how rich are you, or how much money, or how much wealth do you have. And for my dad, it took quite a bit to have still his same job, and he was earning really well for his job, right? But still, it was still the middle class, right? It was not
Hmm.
wealthy or anything. It was the middle class, and my dad was always counting every cent. Where should we spend it? And not here, not here. Like, let's like, he kept the money together, let's say,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he made sure
Hmm.
we had everything, but he was strict with that. Like, we didn't live in wealth. And I grew up with the mindset of money is evil. Money is evil. It only makes
Hmm.
people do bad things. And
That's
people
right.
are so, what I observed
That's
was
right.
they are so
That's right.
obsessed with that thing. Like, why
Hmm.
don't they see
Hmm.
what true wealth is? These were my
Hmm.
thoughts as a kid. And as I grew up, I understood, and I struggled with that for long, long time, till way into my teens. I was so bad with money. I couldn't even handle money really well. I was always without money, you know. When I earned it, I spend it,
Exactly.
right?
Yes.
I could not
Absolutely.
save money. I could not handle it in any way. I was really bad with it. And it
Yeah.
took so, so long, really, until I became a single mom, that I understood, like, you need to stop that mindset. Yeah, like, you have a baby now. You need to earn money. You need to be able to save money. You need to take care of your little family. Like, stop that nonsense, that childish
Mhm.
nonsense, thinking about money is evil and all that stuff. And it kind of cured me in a way of that mindset, but I still cannot deny that the innate heart and soul still believes that I am rich on a different level because of where I grew up, because of what kind of values I have been taught during that time in Asia. And I believe that I can see that in the world, how easy it is for people when they don't have an identity again, how easy it is for them to
Yeah.
fall for that lie that money is everything and that they need to be millionaires, which is a new thing nowadays. All the
Yeah.
15-year-olds, they all want to be YouTubers, millionaires, Mr. Beasts, and all that stuff, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
They have a
Yes.
different mindset about it, and they are so fixated on those things that they don't have anything else to work for. And once they get
Mhm.
there, once they get to the first million, they will be so miserable because they will
Mhm.
understand that nothing changes. They will not be any
Mhm.
richer, they will have just more responsibility for that amount of
That's
money,
it. That's
right?
it.
That's
That's
it.
it.
Nothing
More
really
taxes.
changes. You don't feel more fulfilled just because your
Right.
bank account feels fulfilled or filled, right?
Yes.
Nothing
Yes.
really changes. And that's such a dangerous mindset. And when we
Mhm.
remember back at a time when there were indigenous people, and I grew up in a country where indigenous people were living for a long time before the Russians came and occupied that space and told them, you can't live as nomads anymore. You have to live like we do. You have to have money. You have to stop moving around. What's that? Moving around like nomads. What is that? Like low life, right?
Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
made them, they forced them to live in a very specific way. But back then, no money existed. How did they survive? Food was
That's
for
right.
free, clothing was for free, everything
Yes.
was for free, energy
Yes.
was for free. They didn't need
Yes.
much energy, but they knew how to
Yeah.
get energy for the things they
Yeah.
needed. Everything
Yeah.
was for free. And that makes me think today, in a world we're living today where everything costs money, like originally, and I lived that life, everything is for free. When you grow your own food, it's for free. You just put in some labor, God provides, so to speak.
Yes.
And this is all we need. And of
Yes.
course, now living that, I'm a digital nomad now, right? So I'm traveling, right? And I have to have money. I have to use money. But really, my goal is to find a way to not have to use that at some point anymore, because I know what wealth really means. It's not the yachts and the jets and the huge mansions. It's all beautiful. I appreciate the creativity of human beings, what they can create, and what money can buy. I love beautiful things and rich things, but I know that it is not the real wealth. I know this deep in my soul, and I hope to find and get to that place through my work, hopefully, to then show other people that this is not the only way, that there is actually a different way, a much healthier way, in my observation. Because when you get addicted to money and to material things, you will dilute your soul, like the pureness of your heart and soul. I don't think it can stay pure for you to reach a certain level when you die. I'm not a
Yeah.
believer in God as you, maybe, but I believe in a being that has created all of this, and I believe that this life is a test in some sorts. It's a school, if you will. So
Mhm.
however you get your soul as pure as you have been given at birth, you had a pure soul and pure heart. Are you able to carry it till the end and remain pure? And to
Mhm.
keep it pure, preserve the pureness of your heart and soul. This is the
Mhm.
thought that I have.
Yeah. And I'm going to just piggyback off of the soul, because the Bible says that what would prosper a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? You know,
Yeah.
you can get the money, could buy the things, it could buy the material things, it could put you in a different class of people. But what does it do for your soul? Right? How will you be a better person because you have a bigger bank account? Right?
Hmm.
Like you said, having a more fulfilled bank account does not fulfill you as a person. All it does is create more problems, and it puts a bigger target on your back, right? And then you got to pay in the US more taxes. So you have to really, think about what wealth really means. How are we defining that? So, and I think that, like you said, the 15-year-olds want to be millionaires, and I think it's just for a lifestyle, not really understanding the responsibility that really come with being a millionaire, right?
Mm.
So in understanding that, I really think that the love of money, the love of it, not just money in general, the love of it has created a huge segregation between us as people. And I think that it's by far, it's doing us a disservice. It's very distasteful, because you see the homeless people who are homeless. They have to eat McDonald's. They don't get to eat the steak and the lobster, from those who have riches and who have, been privileged to money, or who have earned money at a very in a very substantial and essential way. So let's say legal too, because some people have money illegally. That's another topic, Ella. But we I think that if I could get to take anything out of this world that will cultivate, and that is a combination of what we see today, it's money. Because the money has driven the crime, the money has driven the separation in who we are as humans. The money has the mindset thinking that that's the end all be all. The money, really changes one's demeanor. And yeah, that's what I would say. And those are the reasons why. Because you see the youth and young adults today, they're chasing the money, they're chasing the fame, and it's causing all of this evil amongst us.
And it's making it even more prevalent, I think. If an I would say evil person, for example, gets their hands on money, I think the evilness in that person will even be extended, exaggerated, because now
Yeah.
they can act out. Now they are protected monetarily, right,
Yes.
to play out their evil, and we see
Yes.
that a lot. If people are um, if they're woke, not in that sense woke, how it is defined in the US, but if they are woken up from their slumber, they know that a lot of rich people in today's world, they are evil. You cannot call it anything else, right? And they have a lot of money, and they feel so protected by that wealth that they
Mm-hmm.
feel they can act out on their evilness without any consequences. And this is
Mm-hmm.
where I would agree with you that this monetary system has so many flaws, and it's crumbling already, and people feel it's crumbling. And I think we need to find a better way. And my hope, honestly, is that with the technology of AI, we might be able to find a new system that would free us from that cracks of that system itself, and to
Yeah.
base the value of things on something else. But
Mm-hmm.
if we are not careful, if we give away our choices to people who are evil, innately evil, then we will never make a change in that system. And I think it will just continue, and more evil people will just rise and come into government spaces and will just lead the world wherever they want to lead the world, but not representing the people really. I think this is also something that people don't really see. They go and vote for just anybody who just looks good, who seems fine,
Yeah. Yeah.
or
Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
I don't know, who has the biggest bank account, right? Like there needs
Mm-hmm.
to be a choice that must be very, very consciously made, because otherwise people will agree with giving away their responsibility to people who don't have the best interests at the heart, with what people really want and need. And we can see that wars all over the place. Like, how is your tax money being spent?
Yeah.
God knows how, right?
God knows how. God, only God knows how. Yes. Man, I could not agree with you more. What do you think my answer was going to be?
Maybe in the direction of the inequality between black and white in the US, which is quite a heavy topic from what I get, or maybe racism. That is what I felt might be one of the things that you would like to remove. But maybe that is also rooted in money, right? The excess of money, right?
Yeah.
When we think about the history, the US history, and how Black Americans never had access in the beginning, right? As slaves, obviously, you don't have any access to that. But then making that weird transition into segregation and all that stupid stuff that they have thought about,
Yeah.
like how evil does a mind need to be to create such a state of living for another human being, like let alone what they have done before, like beyond my understanding and my value system, so to speak. And then trying to get access to things that you didn't create, right? As a Black American woman, for example, trying to get a job, right? Trying to earn that money, right? And all the rules that you need to abide that you didn't even create, and you don't even understand how that all works. And to this day, I think from what I'm getting, right, from the news and the communities that I communicate with, it's still to this day quite hard for certain places in for Black Americans to get access to certain amounts of wealth, and to get access to certain things that is so normal for white people, right? And I'm a big believer in equality because, as you stated in the beginning, we are all human. We bleed the same blood. Like, why make this distinction, right? Why not see the value in another human being, the gifts that they bring, and why not have them be part of that beautiful thing that we create together, the future, right? And I personally don't grow up with competition, which is something that is so heavy in white people. Um, to be in
Hmm.
constant competition with other people, which is why it feels weird for me to be white because I don't have the same mindset as most white people. I grew up in such a harmonious little village where competition was not even a thing. We were all supportive. We all and we were all different, right? I grew up with Asians and with Ukrainians and Russians and like a melting pot, right, of different people. So
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
quite normal for me to see people who looked different than me, right? We even had black people in my country. So, right, which is quite rare to this day, right? They rather move all to the US or Europe, that's their thing, but Asia is quite rare still to this day. So I find it so weird. So this is why I thought maybe you would be going in that direction because
Yeah.
I get so much of that struggle and of that pain, and my heart cries every time when I see the challenges and the struggles, and because I don't understand it. I don't understand how this situation could have been created in such a way. It's just cruel in my heart.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And you touched on it, and it comes from, again, from my perspective, that it came from money. It all came from money. Back in the days, the slaves didn't have money. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and they were very poor in money, but they were very rich in identity. They stuck together, they built together, they created together, they worked together, and they built a strong foundation collectively. If you look at our ancestors, and if you look at our, activists back in the day, in order to form a more union, they joined together to get that done. And it wasn't based upon the money, it was based upon the belief system. What they believed in, what they knew to be right, what they knew to be wrong, what they believed would work, what they believed would not work. you know and the money piece was just like a side effect from all of that type of stuff. So it all came down to the money of it. And I think that, for the love of it, has segregated us in such a huge way, where, like you said, it's a racist thing. It's an inequality thing. It's the whites over here and the blacks over there. And it's a very sensitive topic to even discuss. But I
Mm-hmm.
think that when it all boils down to it, it's about the money, and how we've been trained up. So that's a huge factor of what we face in today's world, as a people, as a country, as a children, as a race, as a nationality, as an ethnicity. It's a huge conversation, and we're having it, and it needs to be had more and more. But it all comes down to, what do you have? you
Mm.
know how much money do you have that makes you available, or that gives you the right to sit at this table, right? Not about the gift that you can bring to help move the mission forward. It's about,
Mm-hmm.
how much money do you have that allows you to be able to sit at this table. And that, to me, is what needs to be removed, because we're living in a capitalism world where everybody is looking to gain money and riches and wealth. It's even gotten to the point where we scamming each other. It's like, do I even want to come on your show? Are you scamming me? So it's that type of mentality that money has created. You're very hesitant to even move forward in doing great things, because you're like, if I get this level of money, then the people around me are going to change. People are going to see me different. people are not going to think that I'm the same person who was raised alongside of them because I have a bank account filled with money when I'm still the same person, you know? So it's the money piece of it. And if you see it on social media, it's a very high content, you know, money, 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 money. So that's my
Yeah.
answer. I'm sticking with it. And I think that, you know, it's a solid answer. It's a wise answer. And yeah,
Yeah.
that's where I am with it. Yeah.
And it is such a waste of gifts, as you beautifully stated, that you are not sitting on the table because you are gifted or because you are smart. Not even that counts anymore, right? Nobody's
Yeah.
looking at your skills anymore, but really how much money you have or how much money you can get them, right? And
Hmm.
it is not always also about the content of your heart. This is, maybe some people will call me naive as much as they want. I've always been naive like that
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I grew up differently. I
Yeah.
can, I've always felt like an alien on this planet because I
Yeah.
grew up so differently from everybody else. And I don't even have contact anymore to the people who I grew up with in a village because we have been spread after the Russian Empire, so to speak, collapsed. We had to flee to another country just to survive, right? Not to starve to death like everybody else in that time did, right? It was really horrible. So I see things differently, and I fully agree that things need to change when it comes to money. And it is interesting that people will see you differently when you gain money.
Yeah.
Not that you change. Yes, of course you change. You may wear nicer clothes. You may afford going to the salon more often, right? You have
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
hair, you have different makeup maybe, right? You have different
Yeah. Of
things,
course.
but you may
Yeah.
not change as a person, but people start to, and especially in Germany, oh my God, how jealous are people? In the US,
Mm.
you kind of can show off, and people will be like, "Oh my God, like you're the queen. How did you do it?" Like people,
Yeah.
that's my impression. Like US people are more curious people on how you did it. Can
Yeah.
you show me? Can you show me how you did it?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But in
Yeah. Yeah.
Germany, like they have their guns out if you have more than them. Like that might be an
Totally.
extreme description of
Yeah.
it, but
Yeah.
it is really really different how people react to you if you become more wealthy. And um, I understand the billionaires, right, who don't wear nice
Hmm.
clothes, right, not to show that they are rich, because
Hmm.
there are consequences to you being rich, right, monetarily rich,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of parallel here in the US, you know, depending on what environment or region you're in, you know.
Hmm.
But I think it's pretty parallel. If you got a lot of money, you better look out. You got a target on your back. Yeah, you got a target on your back. So remove the money, Ella, and I think that we would get down to, you know, the root cause of what it is that we're facing in today's world.
Well, thank you so much for
You're welcome.
sharing your wisdom and taking the
Yeah,
time. I really really appreciate you.
yeah. Thank you for having me. This has been an enjoyable experience. One I would never forget.
Ah,
When I, yeah.